there are a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, our friends and others who we didn't know, who didn't give themselves a break. They didn't treat themselves with grace. They didn't treat themselves with empathy. And I relate to that. We're very hard on ourselves. Did we place enough calls? Did we do an outbound marketing? Did I spend enough time with my head of customer success? This employee's struggling. Was I there for her? And I think what we've realized in this imbalanced life is you just have to do the best that you can. And we have strategies that we're sharing as the cheat codes that help you at least feel like you're in control, even if you're not.
Everyone, welcome to Brilliant. We've got Kass and Michael Lazerow. I have an amazing book. Just finished reading it a few days ago. It came with a little plastic shovel too, which was amazing. I loved it. This is a surprise read of the year for me. You know, I read a lot of books. We have a lot of authors on this, and I didn't know what I was getting into. I suspected from the forward, I was like, this could be kind of great. And that's where I want to start. Kass, Michael, welcome to the show. Thank you for being on.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I want to get right into this. I've got some questions for you. The one that stands out because it's on the front cover, it's at the very beginning. Let's start with Gary Vee. Like, where'd that come from?
Should I take that, Kass?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so we love Gary, and we met Gary before he was the Gary that we all know and love. And like many entrepreneurs, he had a dream and he had no money. And he showed up at our office, and we just started Buddy Media. And we had about 1,000 square feet. And he came in and he said, listen, I've been working for my dad since I was 13. I've never made more than $100,000 a year. I have a vision to build a social media agency to help brands market like I have at Wine Library, my dad's wine company. He'd started his show, Wine Library TV, which was one of the first shows on YouTube. And he said, can I use your conference room? And I said, sure, like for a meeting? He goes, no, as my office. I said, well, that's a bold ask for someone who I just met. But I love your style. You know, what's the worst thing that could happen? You get a no. Listen, I like you, and I think we'd love to help. So let's go talk to Kass, who runs the company, and then Kass, you can take it away from there.
Yeah, so they both came to me, and my first response was, are you effing kidding me? That's our only conference room. And anyone who knows Gary knows that he's kind of got this infectious personality, and he just cajoled me to say yes. And we did it, and it was great because his culture and his commitment to smiling and having fun each day was a great, partner to our company that we were running. And we got a front row seat to seeing him and his brother build this incredible empire. So that was awesome.
Very cool, and really cool beginning to that and to your book, by the way.
Well,
I was hooked. I was hooked from the forward. I was like, oh, this is going to be good. So great job.
He's been pushing us for a very long time to get out there, tell our story. You know, I think we're both each other's mentors. Mm-hmm. So I call him when there's something on my mind. He calls me. We own a pickleball team together. We did a wine company together. We've done, one or two investors in V Friends. And this, seeing him up close was the biggest lesson we learned, because we did something that we just wanted to do because we love entrepreneurs. And the more we've given in this world, the more we have said yes to stuff that, frankly, many times we shouldn't say yes, right? Like giving away, you're in the real estate business, giving away a quarter of your real estate, some random dude. The more we've given, the more we've gotten. And it all came full circle that, we're in his office yesterday. We did his podcast. We did a 3-hour live stream on National Shovel Day, a holiday we made up. And it's just a great friendship that we would have never gotten if we hadn't spent every day together in the formative years of both of our companies.
All right, two things. One, what's National Shovel Day? Tell me about that.
So as everyone knows, on April 14th is National Garden Day, which is a celebration of gardens, spring. Mm-hmm. And, it's hard to grow stuff in a garden. You got to put in the time, and over time, hopefully things grow. Yeah. And so we hijacked it And we started National Shovel Day, which is the celebration of the entrepreneur and the hard work that goes into building something that matters and growing something that eventually you can harvest to live the life you want to live.
I love that. And that's, you said April 14th?
We already did it, and it was awesome. We had 5,000 people from Vayner Nation and from our community. And we had our favorite entrepreneurs, Mike Cesario from Liquid Death, and Rich, who started Complex, and DJ Ski, who's been hustling since he was 18 years old. And we just did what we do in the book, which is shared the cheat codes that we wish we learned or wish we knew when we started. And instead of just our cheat codes, it was all of our friends.
That's so cool. I love that. And then second question is, what's Fluffhead?
Oh, no.
So Fluffhead, I appreciate, not all of us are blessed with the head of hair that you have. You have beautiful hair.
Thank you.
I do have hair, but it's been a long day. And Fluffhead is one of my favorite songs from my favorite band called Fish, which has been around for 40 years playing hippie jam music.
Got it. Okay, sweet. Tell me about Buddy Media, because you mentioned in the book you sold it to Salesforce for 754 million. Right.
Yeah.
So I was learning all about both of you as I was reading. And that was, to me, was like, whoa, wait a second. What? So what was Buddy Media and how did that happen?
So Buddy Media was Mike and my second company together. Our first one was golf.com, and we sold that to Time Inc. for 25 million back in 2006. And in 2007, on May 24th, 2007, Mike had an idea right after I'd given birth to our third child. And his idea was that we were going to get into the social media space. And we also birthed that day, the actual company. And I'll let Mike talk about how he came up with the idea.
Yeah, so I was sitting in a hospital room. Kass was delivering our third child. She delivers all of our kids, as you know, through C-section, for those who are following very closely.
Yes.
And what's great about the third is it's a planned C-section. So we got to the hospital, and I'm just sitting in the room because dads don't really do much during C-sections. And I'm reading on my BlackBerry news, and what pops up, Mark Zuckerberg gets on stage at his developer conference and challenges developers to build applications on top of the Facebook platform for the first time. And what he did was he exposed this virtual representation of real life relationships that he had mapped through Facebook, right? Photo tagging early on. This is 2007. And it just hit me as the beginning of a brand new internet. We got into Web 1.0. I had a company in college at Northwestern University. Kass and I started golf.com. Those were primarily single player experiences. You sat down, you read news. You could play solitaire against a computer, but there was no real social games, right? And what was social about the internet wasn't very safe. It was the early CompuServe chat rooms and AOL chat rooms, which was primarily just filth for those of us who were on that. Unless you went into a room that really had your interests, like real estate or music or something like that. And so I just thought that adding friends to the experience of the internet would be big. Like, I'd rather play games against friends. I'd rather do stuff with my friends online. And so I said to Kass, I think I have our next business. It's going to be building apps on top of Facebook. We ended up pivoting a bunch of different times into a software as a service cloud computing software. But it really just started because I loved the idea of Facebook at a time when it was very exciting. They hadn't ruined democracy or mental health or some of the stuff that has happened since.
Well, you mentioned something that you mentioned towards the end of the book right now, which was pivoting. I had highlighted here on a page there, keep doing, you have the option to either keep doing what you're doing,
Right.
to fold, or to pivot.
That's right.
And that obviously hit me hard because I highlighted it. I'm like, damn, I feel like that's happening too much. So how did you, Do you feel like you go with your gut a lot more, both of you, where you're like, you know what, we've got to pivot. There's a big opportunity here. How do you decide which one to do?
Well, Mike's really good at getting companies to focus. And then I focus on the execution of, his vision. So when you actually write down your big rock priorities and you know what those are in any given period of time, let's just say the first year, then you also have the financials, right? You have the unit economics. You understand how much things cost
Yeah.
and how much you can sell them for and if there's any profit. So whatever the goals are and whatever you've committed to, that becomes your bible, and that's something that you have to reference
Mm.
back all the time. You also have to remember, when you come up with your goals, you have to come up with your measurements of success. So if you say, like, okay, I want to get more clients, that's like the number one goal. Well, how many clients? What does that mean? Is success to you 100 clients? Is it five? Are you talking, enterprise clients? Are you talking small clients? What is it? So if you have those success measurements and those metrics, the first thing you should do as an entrepreneur and a business leader is really look to those and say, okay, first of all, before I pivot to anything, am I on track? Right? Is this what I said I was going to do when in the beginning? And is it on track? The second thing is you should listen to your gut. And Mike always says there's like this long conversation between your gut and your ego, right? And right. And you're literally trying to convince your gut that it's wrong, only
Mm,
to realize, weeks or months have passed and you should have jumped earlier.
that's so good. Your ego's always trying to convince your gut. When you said that, I instantly thought of two things. I'm like, oh shit, yeah, that's right. That's so true.
Yeah.
Man, that's tough. How do you let go of your ego? Like, how do you consistently go back and check it?
That's the tough.
The hardest part is, when you start a company or you set up a shingle selling real estate, whatever you do, you're basically inviting the world to watch you fail. And it's full of fear, right? We
Yeah.
have a very close friend right now who is at JP Morgan forever, and he's reinventing his life. He's pivoting by selling real estate in the Hamptons.
Oh, wow.
And he, and so we've helped him a lot think through that business. And in order to sell $1 billion worth of real estate, like Ryan Serhant, you have to sell $1 million, right? So his goals are very different than your goals, right? His goals: how do I get one client on board? How do I do one transaction? And then maybe for the next 3 months, how do I do three transactions? And then 10, and then 100. Oh, wow, I got to hire people, right? So you have to continuously evolve your goals. The issue with entrepreneurs is we're optimistic. So we have one good meeting and we're like, we're crushing it, right? Like,
We're going to be billionaires.
yeah, like this is easy. And then you wake up and you're like, oh man, I don't have any other clients and I'm running out of money and, I'm miserable. And so I think that you have to tap into the ego, which drove you to go out on your own, right? Because we're a little weird. Like we didn't settle for a job. We settled to be a free agent and fight for ourselves and fight for our family. That takes ego, and you need to be able to listen and have empathy and tap into your gut and admit to yourself first that things aren't working out. And then the fear starts because you're like, how do I tell my spouse? How do I tell my parents? How do I
Mm.
tell my other business partners? What if I do this? And you're just riddled with this fear, which then causes uncertainty and doubt, and you end up making bad decisions. So it's about holding both your ego and your gut so that you can make decisions that aren't driven by the worst thing, which is fear.
All right. Sounds like that's a balance. But then in the book, we talk about how we have to live a kind of like a life out of balance, being in this whole entrepreneur world, shoveling shit in essence, right? Because we're always having to be
That's
in there.
right.
So explain to me that, like, how do we cope with that and then balance this over here? Because we do need a little bit of both.
Yes. I mean, what we say is when you're an entrepreneur, there really is no balance, right? So you need to accept, especially if you are leading a group of people. So this really applies to any kind of group, right? Any kind of
Yeah.
like manager, leader. You have to accept that if you want to do something well, you're all in, and that's going to be the focus and your intensity about it. And other things will suffer. Now, they don't have to suffer entirely, but they definitely will not be getting your attention, right? They won't be getting your 100% attention. And so, what we've done over the past, I would say 15 years, is really look back on how we suffered as entrepreneurs and what are some of the mistakes we made, which is why we wrote the book to really help entrepreneurs, even with this one topic of balance and health, because
Mhm.
we didn't get it right so many times. Like Mike was, overweight. He had heart issues after our last company. I was overweight and found out I had a severe thyroid issue and disease. And it's easy to just push off things. And what we've realized is you have to put them on the calendar. You have to. If you could put any meeting on the calendar and you don't miss them, the same thing has to happen with your health or whatever it is that you use as a coping mechanism. Perhaps it's meditation, listening to music, going out with friends. Mike and I had a date night every Wednesday and Sunday, and Mike and I tell all of our, the CEOs and founders of our investment portfolio to go out as well, and we get texts, pictures of them, going out with their spouses on Wednesdays, and Saturdays. It's key to put it down, and if you don't put it on a calendar, it's not going to happen.
I love that. Then let's get into how do you handle that feeling like you're just not doing enough? Because that's where I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs get that drive, but it also causes this whole issue that we're talking about. Like I feel like we live there all the time. Like, oh, it's just not doing enough. Look at them. They're doing better. Oh my gosh, I'm falling behind. What the hell's going on? Am I ever going to get there?
Right.
What's interesting about that is, now that a bunch of people have read the book, um, there are a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, our friends and others who we didn't know, who didn't give themselves a break. They didn't treat themselves with grace. They didn't treat themselves with empathy. And and I relate to that. We're very hard on ourselves. Did we place enough calls? Did we do enough outbound, marketing? Did I spend enough time with my head of customer success? This employee's struggling. Like, was I there for her? Right. And I think what we've realized in this imbalanced life is you just have to do the best that you can. And we have strategies that we're sharing as the cheat codes that help you at least feel like you're in control, even if you're not. And the biggest one that I'll just mention real quick is focus. The number one issue that we see with entrepreneurs, and we have made 100 investments in over 100 into entrepreneurs. We've probably taken pitches with 5,000. We've met a lot of entrepreneurs. It's the only thing we know, basically, entrepreneurship. Been doing it since we're very young, and entrepreneurs come in and I say, what are your top 3 things you got to get done? So if you want to be number one CRM system or the number one haircut location or the number one producer, selling real estate in the Hamptons, what are the top 3 things you need to do to achieve that vision?
Mm.
And when an entrepreneur is focused, when they say, number 1, I got to get clients. Number 2, I got to get listings. Number 3, I got to get, and it just comes off because they're living it, right? Other entrepreneurs say, well, I kind of have to hire. I think this is important, but also, and it's like, no. If you don't know what you're focused on, your team doesn't know. And if your team doesn't know, you're all paddling in different directions and you ain't going to get anywhere.
Texts, pictures of them, going out with their spouses on Wednesdays, and Saturdays. It's key to put it down. And if you don't put it on a calendar, it's not going to happen.
I love that. Then let's get into how do you handle that feeling like you're just not doing enough? because that's where I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs get that drive, but it also causes this whole issue that we're talking about. Like I feel like we live there all the time. Like, oh, it's just not doing enough. Look at them. They're doing better. Oh my gosh, I'm falling behind. What the hell's going on? Am I ever going to get there?
Right.
What's interesting about that is, now that a bunch of people have read the book, um, there are a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, our friends and others who we didn't know, who didn't give themselves a break. They didn't treat themselves with grace. They didn't treat themselves with empathy. And I relate to that. We're very hard on ourselves. Did we place enough calls? Did we do enough outbound, marketing? Did I spend enough time with my head of customer success? This employee's struggling. Like, was I there for her, right? And I think what we've realized in this imbalanced life is you just have to do the best that you can. And we have strategies that we're sharing as the cheat codes that help you at least feel like you're in control, even if you're not. And the biggest one that I'll just mention real quick is focus. The number one issue that we see with entrepreneurs, and we have made 100 investments in over 100 into entrepreneurs. We've probably taken pitches with 5,000. We've met a lot of entrepreneurs. It's the only thing we know, basically, entrepreneurship. Been doing it since we're very young, and entrepreneurs come in and I say, what are your top 3 things you got to get done? So if you want to be number one CRM system or the number one haircut location or the number one producer, selling real estate in the Hamptons, what are the top 3 things you need to do to achieve that vision? And when an entrepreneur is focused and they say, number 1, I got to get clients. Number 2, I got to get listings. Number 3, I got to get, and it just comes off because they're living it, right? Other entrepreneurs say, well, I kind of have to hire. I think this is important, but also, and it's like, no. If you don't know what you're focused on, your team doesn't know. And if your team doesn't know, you're all paddling in different directions and you ain't going to get anywhere. Right. And so to answer your question specifically about that feeling of not doing enough, when you get hyper focused and when each of those things that you've mentioned, 1, 2, 3, 4, stack ranked order, have measurements that Kass was talking about, right? We need 5 customers. You stop telling yourself stories, negative stories and positive stories, and you start grasping and holding on to these very tangible areas of focus and goals. And fear is not a bad thing. Negative thoughts are not a bad thing. If you say you're going to reach 5 customers and you only have 1, you should feel like shit, right?
Yeah,
do the work.
Not doing the work. That's it.
Right. So it's like, these are all emotions that can be, at least directed into positive ways. And I know myself that I'm much more motivated by fear of failure than any monetary prize. The idea that I'm going to fail in public is both exhilarating and so scary that I work. And that's why we're working so hard to get the book out, because we don't want to write a book that no one reads. That's a failure, right? We don't want to be a failure.
Yeah, I see that. That makes sense. Then tell me where the idea of the title came from, Shoveling Shit. What's the idea behind that? I know what it is, but tell us listening.
Well, when we decided to write a book, and our expertise is literally being founders, right? And understanding how to raise money, hire teams, pivot, market when you have no budgets, build a culture, build a cult-like culture, you name it, like fundraise, everything, talk to investors, develop create a really good board as opposed to a board that kind of sucks all your time. We decided that if we were going to write it, we had to have a title that made sense. We first wanted to do Entrepreneur, which would have been really funny, but someone had that. Yeah. So we thought, okay, well, let's go back to the basics. What are you doing every day when you are a leader, when you are a founder, when you are an entrepreneur, when you're working for yourself? You are getting punched in the face. It's kind of like, I don't know, Tristan, do you play golf? Do you play
Sadly,
golf?
yes.
Yes, it's like golf, right? You go out for 18 holes. That's 4.5, if you're lucky, hours, maybe longer, and you have one good shot, one little mini win that keeps you coming back the next day.
Yes.
So basically, you're shoveling shit all day.
Mm, got
That's
it.
where it came from.
I do want to add that the full title is Shoveling Shit, a Love Story
Yes.
about the entrepreneur's messy path to success. And so when we say a shoveling shit, a love story, it captures two ideas that you have to hold at the same time, which is very difficult for humans. It's hard for us to hold two ideas that are opposing each other at the same exact time. And the idea is that being a founder, starting a company, running your own business is shoveling shit. It's miserable. It's suffering. It's not what you want to be doing all day. There's nothing more miserable. And you love it. It's epic. And it's where you find your passion and your purpose. And you develop this love for it where you would rather work and hustle and do podcasts and get out there than play golf or pickleball or anything that you're into, right? And so we tried to capture the idea that entrepreneurs, yes, are miserable often. And if you ask them if they would rather do something else, universally, they will say no. It's the only thing I want to do. I'm miserable and I want to do, which is very different than other fears and other miserable things,
Crazy.
right? So we tried to capture that in a way that it's like a secret language that if you're an entrepreneur or would be, you look at it, you're like, I get it without even getting it.
That makes sense. And then in looking for people that have great ideas and deciding whether or not you're going to work with them, what are those things that you look for?
So when we decide to, let's start with the first one. If you decide that you want like a co-captain, right? And you want a co-founder, someone to do this, you want to partner with someone, you better do your research, because picking a founder, picking a co-founder, anybody, a team member, is like literally picking a spouse, right?
Yeah.
You have to make sure that you understand what you're getting into. You have to have the difficult conversations. And in our experience and our expertise, we have seen that what works best is if you don't have overlapping skill sets. And when you don't, then the magic really happens. You can speed along, you can move quickly, you delegate to both of your expertise, and there's no overlap, micromanaging, there's no paralysis of decisions because you both have opinions on things, right? And you can move really fast. When you then have to surround yourself with a leadership team, you also have to check your ego, because you want to hire people that are smarter than you and that fill in your gaps, right?
Yeah.
So you got to know what you don't know and be okay to not be the smartest person in the room, right? And again, the synchronicity happens where you can really move quickly, you can make changes, you can actually pivot when you need to, if everybody understands their role.
That's often a challenge for entrepreneurs, where we assume that other people just know because they're here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how do you keep that vision, that communication going?
You have to over communicate it. This is like one of the biggest things. Like I always say, like my biggest cheat code is radical transparency, but in underneath that, it's not just like, okay, here's how our company's doing financially, because that's what we used to do. We used to share the financials to every employee and treat them like they were part of our board. But it's also making sure that you repeat the goals, those big rock priorities, every chance you get. So it's in one-on-one meetings, it's in leadership meetings, and it's in the all hands meetings, it's in the newsletter, it's at the end of an email, it's when you talk to someone and they're like, okay, like I'm doing this and this, and then you say, right, and remember, this ties back to our big goals because, and you're constantly saying it over and over and over again, so that everybody knows like what track they're on. And that it all ties up into alignment of everybody, because everybody knows their part. And if you don't keep saying that, the wheels can come off the bus.
Who drives that more? You, Cass, or Michael?
What would you say, Mike?
That's such a cute question. Cass is.
I know, I knew it. I knew it. Just
If it was up to me, the culture, let's just say, would not have been strong. Cass is and I think a lot of people realize this who've worked with her, just the single best builder of culture, at least in New York City tech, which is important because it's very hard to hire engineers, and there's such a fight for talent, and the cheat codes that she wrote the chapter, putting in your culture,
Yep.
and her cheat codes are just incredible. And it starts with, as she said, stories and the origin story of the business. And, you have to nail that story and say it again and again. For Buddy Media, it was very much about like helping companies market in an entirely new way. Every company has their story. And I don't care if you're selling real estate or pizza, you have your story. And when employees come in, they need to understand the story. They need to be the ambassador. They need to know how their story levels up to the company's story, how the work they do every single day helps the company achieve the vision that's in the story. And I think the greatest founders, CEOs, leaders, that's what they do. That's what Mark Benioff did, who I got, was really lucky to be able to work with him for 40 years. It's what, going back to Steve Jobs, and, it's stories, it's symbols. So we had awards and rituals that when you look at them from the highest level, they're not that different than, religious symbols and rituals, like holidays that we celebrate together and things we do every quarter. And those rituals are what people, I think, hold on to, and leaders that are not consistent, that don't show up to practice those rituals again and again, I think are leaving a lot on the table. We had one ritual, which we don't talk about a lot because it's a different time. It's called Scotch o'clock. And we had someone who loves Scotch. Friday afternoon at 5 p.m., he invited employees for Scotch tasting in his little office. And a year later, turned into like 200 people drinking in the office, which I look back and I'm like, man, oh man, a lot of risk there. But that became a ritual, almost like a Sabbath, right? That people did together.
Yeah.
And that is powerful because if you could find friend connections and human connections at work, even if you don't love work, it's going to be bearable.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I could tell Cass. I just asked the question to see if I was right. I'm like, I feel like a Cass is going to be the one that's. So yeah, that was totally on point.
A
Tell
softball there.
Yeah, but I just wanted to test it. Big rock priorities. How do we get there? How do we outline our own? What's the cheat code to that?
Mike, you want to take it?
Yeah. So, we always thought about stuff not always. We made all of the mistakes of not focusing. And what we're talking about right now is a big part of focus. So you have the big rock priorities. And what the big rock priorities are is you imagine you have a jar. You're never going to put in the small stuff first, right? The sand, the pebbles, because there would be no way to get the rocks in. If you put the big rocks in first, then you put in the pebbles, and then you pour in the sand and you shake it up, you can fit a lot more in there than if you put the big rock in at the end. And so the big rock priorities are the things you have to accomplish, the most important things that make your company different and propel you toward the vision you've outlined. And so for us, it's to be the number one social media marketing platform. Okay, what do we need to do? Sell. If we don't have clients, we can't grow. We're not going to be the biggest. What are the pebbles? We have to open an office. Like there's certain things that are important to us that we have to do that aren't number one, but things that we just have to get done, right? And then the sand is all of the table stakes of being a company. You got to do your filings in Delaware. If you're a Delaware C Corp, you have to file taxes. That doesn't make you unique, but you kind of have to do them or else things are going to not go well. But the big rocks are like those things that are really the special, most important things that make your company, big. The issues, you can only do a few of them at a time. And so many entrepreneurs want to do 10 of them. And it's like, well, you don't have the money, the staff, or the time to do 3 of them. So let's just get 1 done and then we can move on, or maybe 2.
Yeah, that is a big challenge. I feel like all entrepreneurs want to do every idea they get, and then they're all over the place.
It's the
How do
shiny
you
object syndrome.
how do you stay accountable to yourself, like to your mission? How is that? Besides the cheat code of having Cass, because I feel like that's a cheat code.
So for me, it goes back to a system we use that we outline in the book, which we borrowed and modified from Mark Benioff, called the V2 bomb. And it's the world's greatest way to focus yourself personally and your organization. And the V2 bomb, it's when I first started at Salesforce, I'm like, oh, this is corporate. Like, do I really need to do this, Mark? I've never worked for a company. And he's like, sit down, shut up, just do it. Like, trust me. And what it is like you outline your vision, you write it down. If it's not written down, it doesn't exist. So, okay, we want to be X. We want to be the top producer of Hampton's real estate, top seller. Okay, what are the values? That's the second V, V2. What are the values that you hold true that are never going to change? Hard work, trustworthiness, laughter, whatever is important to you. And then the V2 MOM, the MOM, is methods, obstacles, metrics. Methods is what do you need to do to reach that vision? Which could be, I'm going to ask all of my friends, number 1, if they have any leads. Number 2, marketing. Number 3, I'm going to do an event in East Hampton and invite everyone I know. Like, you're very specific. And then the obstacles is we found it important to understand before you embark on your journey, what's going to get in the way. Like, you would never leave for like a trip down the Grand Canyon without like a rain jacket, right? So it's like good to think ahead of like what's going to like make you miserable or get in the way. Then the last one is just how are you going to measure it? For each of those methods, what does success look like? So as I said earlier, you're honest. And that's how I hold myself accountable. And whenever I do something that's like outside that, and I do a lot. I take meetings, I give away office space, I do a lot of stuff I maybe shouldn't do. Cass is like, well, is that a priority? Is that going to help you reach that vision? Is that what you said you needed to do? And, self-awareness is very difficult for a lot of entrepreneurs, but we think if you work at it, it can be a superpower.
Do you do it the same way, Cass? Is there a slight difference?
So I'm very, listen, I think the way we organize companies and have them focus is like honestly the best way that I've ever seen. And how we get them on board to do this is great, because within seconds, when anyone says to us, oh, like, here's what I'm trying to do, and we're like, like, let's go back. What are your 3 priorities, kind of thing, right? And like getting him through the V2 mom. My brain works very differently than Mike's and most visionaries, most creative people. I've got a little bit of creativity in me, and that's usually used for like Christmas, gift giving, like, arranging rooms and things like that. But mostly I think I would say probably 100% of the time, I think in spreadsheets and Google Sheets and lists.
That's awesome.
So I don't need help figuring out what to focus on. I just have that mind that just kind of goes, I need more help turning it off.
That's awesome. This is a great partnership.
Yes. Yes.
That's why you guys in the book and earlier mentioned picking a co-founder, making sure that your talents don't overlap. I think that's important.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, what do you guys think about meetings? Do they suck? Amazing. Tell me about the whole meetings world.
I hate meetings. I think they're usually a massive time suck. I understand the importance of them. So I think they have to have a purpose. And you have to be very, very careful who you invite to the meeting. And if there's no reason, like literally someone's just listening to something else, they shouldn't be in the meeting unless they're like an intern, which I kind of love to get them to like listen to how meetings are run and things. But I, I would love to not have a meeting. They just massive time suck.
But I think
How
we've also gotten, there's certain meetings that are worth every second of the meeting. And so we believe at the beginning of the week, management team should get together. And you only talk if you have something that everyone needs to hear, or you need something from everyone. And it's the only way to break down barriers as you scale an organization, especially in a virtual world where you're not bouncing off each other all day.
Well,
And
one
so,
thing. Oh, sorry, Mike. I was going to say one thing that we did, which I think was a crucial meeting, is the leadership. We call them management team meetings, and they were mandatory. And we didn't like basically unless you had a funeral, wedding, or a honeymoon, you had to call in or you had to be there. And those were the only meetings where we would change the product roadmap. There was no other time the roadmap would change. And the reason for that is I invited the head of every department. So you had engineering, product, customer service, sales, marketing, PR, legal, and then Mike and I. And we would all talk about all of our needs. It was kind of like we called it like sitting at the kitchen table and kind of like talking about what everybody's doing and all of our needs. And there
Yeah.
would be arguments between usually sales and customer success, right? And then you'd have engineers who wanted to build the cool stuff, and then Mike
Mm,
wanting to
mm,
build the stuff that maybe he saw would be the future. And we all would listen to each other. Didn't mean we all agreed, but we would only change it in that meeting because then there was a consequence. Something had to come off or something was delayed as a result.
mm.
And what that did is it protected it so that we were always on the same page. We all heard, oh, we're not doing this because, or we're moving this because, and, you know, that's it.
I like that.
And it helped. It made for less resentment, less surprises. Teams would know and they felt, which was great. So like the people, below on the teams of, all these leads would know that it didn't matter. You could talk about anything you wanted, but nothing was changed. We could talk about ideas in meetings, but they were still going to focus on what they were told to do from the previous week because
Yeah,
they knew every single week we would come out and deliver whether anything had changed or is it still the same.
makes sense. How do you
Yeah.
track that you're on the right track? What do you use software? Is it a piece of paper? Does somebody lead that accountability? What does that look
Yeah.
like?
Mike and the head of product. Mike, you can answer.
yes. So, I mean, the question really starts with, when you start these companies, everything is gut. You don't know, like you don't have customer feedback. You have just ideas, right? And the longer you're in business, the bigger you get, it becomes much more data driven. And any company that doesn't have dashboards is just flying blind. So if you don't know what the key metrics are that are moving the needles for your business, and people look at sales as a part of the dashboard, but it's hard to just say, I am going to generate X amount of revenue. It's easier to say every salesperson has to do 80 calls a week, outbound calls, and you track that, right? So every company that I'm now a part of, we basically dissect the business to say, what are the inputs that drive the outputs that we want? And I just got off of a call where it was a board meeting, and it's all about outbound calls. And if the sales reps put in the time, they can make a boatload of cash, and there's no shortcuts. There's no AI that's going to save them. There's no kind of like baby Jesus sales software that all of a sudden you press a button and money starts raining from the ceiling. It's just good old fashioned, for the most part, outbound. And so, how do you know you have product market fit? Well, are customers using it? If you're an app, like, are they returning? And so we really love not data for data's sake, but it's what are the inputs that you really are trying to measure that, you are confident will produce the outputs that you need. And too many people focus on outputs and don't understand what gets them there.
Yeah, that's very true. What do you think gets most companies there? What are the
We've always been big believers in the power of sales. I mean, there's nothing better than like relationships. I can't tell you how many outbound messages I send a week, a lot. We have a lot of companies. We have a healthcare staffing company, and I'm constantly, selling. And I'm also doing stuff for others that when they ask me, I know how hard it is. If I can
Yeah.
help them, like I would say 80% of my time these days is helping others at our companies and just random like acquaintances.
Mm.
And then the rest is really focused on like, the stuff that I'm driving, as an investor now, which we run a venture firm and we have our own private equity firm. Like our client is our entrepreneur. So we're here not to ride the entrepreneur. We're here to work for them. We know how
What
hard it is.
what companies do you primarily, or what sectors do you primarily invest in?
So software is where we've made most of our money, but I would hate to kind of lead you to believe that we focus. We are very long-term investors in liquid death from seed investors, Series A. So that's as far
Great
as
part of the
software.
book. Great part of the book.
As far as software as you can get, we have a space. We have two space companies. We have healthcare staffing. We have virtual cardiac rehab. Background checks. Name this. We have games. Name the space. We probably have companies. The reason is we think that no matter what we know about a space, the entrepreneur knows a lot more. And our job is to support the entrepreneur with capital, with advice, with sales leads. And we win together, we lose together. So we look at it as a job. It's not just, we're not allocators of capital. We're business builders with our entrepreneurs.
I love that. What are you most excited about in the next few years that you're working on or that you want to work on?
I think for
I mean,
us is this next 50, oh, sorry, Mike, this next 50
no, go
years
ahead.
is about impact, right? It's about us giving back. We had the first 50 years where we earned our reputation, we earned money, we're building a family. But this next 50, I think we're excited to be able to give back more. We're really long with certain organizations like Cycle for Survival, which we're giving, the profits of this book to. So we believe that we can help a lot of people with this book and also do good by giving back to the communities in which we live and the ones that have helped us.
Yeah, I see that. I see that in the book. You just laid it all out. It's really well done on there. So great job on that.
Thank you.
And now, as far as companies you're working with, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what's the most exciting one? Like, which one's like, damn, this is going to be amazing. Like the founders are crazy. The idea is crazy. I love this.
So we do love crazy. We bought a golf team, the New York Bluebirds, in a new high stakes golf league. The only reason I bring that up is we had the championship a few weeks ago, which we won. So
Oh,
winning on the field as a team owner was awesome. 5,000 people there, $100,000 pot. It's par 3 under the lights in Arizona. So we love sports as entertainment, and kind of, we're not necessarily talking about NFL, NBA. We're not at the level that we want to spend $3 billion to like buy a team, nor can we. But we just think that sports is entertainment. The other area that we love is healthcare. We bought a healthcare staffing firm. It's been around for 25 years, very successful, that we're looking to grow. I talked about the, virtual cardiac rehab. We have a healthcare staffing background check company called Karma Check. The reason why I bring up healthcare is if we really want to make a dent in kind of the government debt and get the economy moving forward, we have to figure out what to do about healthcare costs. And it's the last major area of the economy that hasn't gone through digital transformation. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs to do two things. One is, and most importantly, provide services that should exist. So there are a lot of services that you wonder, like, wait, why are we doing it like this? And if you can find an area where, and mental health has gone through this, right? Like access to mental health has been revolutionized by apps and by these services. Some of the other areas haven't yet. And then the second part you have to figure out is, why does it make sense for the financial system of healthcare? Who's going to pay for it, and why does it save money? Because the day of spending 20% of GDP on healthcare, I just don't think it's sustainable. And so if you can come up with services that keep people out of the ER, and which is very expensive for the payers, and makes it better for the patients, saving their lives, letting them live a healthier life, increasing their health span, not just their lifespan. There's going to be a lot of services, and that's why you see entrepreneurs focus on longevity. You know, we know that obesity and, you know, everything that comes with that, diabetes, is just a huge tax on the system. So anything that makes us live longer is going to reduce today's healthcare costs. Maybe we'll have a lot of old people who are 150 years old in 50 years. That'll be another issue, but
crazy.
Love that space. But healthcare would be our number one.
Okay, I like that. How do you think AI changes healthcare?
Well, let's look at 20% of all healthcare costs are administrative costs. So I still go into the doctor's office and they give me a piece of paper or a whole thing I got to fill out. You know, it asks me like name, number, address, am I pregnant, all this. Like, really? Like, why isn't that an app, right? Like, why hasn't it been digitized? Why haven't we gotten all of the paper, which costs like, you know, the back office of hospitals are so expensive. And so,
and don't forget too, Mike, let's talk about the advancement of cures. I mean, just using AI for data and being able to have that kind of power behind, you know, the cross-pollination of data with different hospitals to try to cure things like cancer. Like, research is going to be like, we're going to see so many advancements in healthcare in the next 20 years. It's going to be amazing.
Okay. Question about, you know, a large part of my audiences are real estate agents, about half of them. With AI coming in and there being eventually, I think, less real estate agents over a longer period of time, how do you think the ones that stay agents remain relevant to the people that need them?
Well, I think that, you know, I'll say this for all service providers, and we are in the same boat as, you know, executive recruiters with a healthcare staffing company. But if you look at your business as just transactional, that your job is to sell properties or to help individuals buy properties, that is not, in my mind, the way to look at it. Your job is to provide advice, to provide information, to be a trusted advisor, to help them stay out of trouble, right? So you're not a transaction agent, you are an advocate. And there's no better time, as you're doing, put content out there that makes your industry a better place, to make your customers, potential customers. And so AI is already helping with editing videos that we're doing. It's already helping with creating videos, so generative AI.
Yeah.
We're piloting an AI BDR outreach program, which means firing messages to companies based on data. So in our case, we see that you are looking for a new head of compliance at your hospital. We have 3 candidates we think you should talk to. Would you like to meet them? If so, click on this link to set up a Calendly. Now, some people will see that as spam, right? I see that as a very targeted, personalized message that can bring benefits to that business and solve a problem that they're having. It's hard to
Yeah,
operate as without a compliance officer, right?
very true.
So we're now firing off 4,000 messages a month that are targeted, specific, and personalized.
Mm.
Now, I say pilot because we only had 10 leads that kind of set up meetings last month. So we're just getting it to work.
Testing it out.
But, I remember, I remember this week where I get in the mail all these cards that are like, you looking to sell your apartment? I live in New York City. Are you looking to buy an apartment?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. There's a lot of those.
you get that, and it actually says a lot about the broker. To me, it says that they're like a little behind in times, right? Like, are they really paying 65 cents or whatever it is now? The postal service is so expensive to send a piece of paper, like a dead treat, to the mail to get my attention. Like, if they sent a message saying, hey, I'll give you like X amount of dollars for your apartment, I don't know what the message is, but like something personal.
Yeah, or
And
start a combination of retargeting campaigns specifically to people that own homes that are not living in them, right? So yeah, a combo of things. I agree. I see that.
and these tools are like, the way I look at the tools it's very early. There are
Yeah.
not a lot of case studies that are slam dunks. And that's not a reason not to try them out. Because whoever gets the future faster, we have learned, wins.
Very true. Talk to me about perception is reality then, because I think that goes hand in hand here.
That term came up, with me in a lot of different scenarios. So for one, when, we'd be sitting around with a management team people and I would say, look, I think morale is broken around here. And everyone would be like, what are you talking about? And I'd give examples and they say, oh, well, that's just like one person, one or two people. And I'd say, no, no, no. Perception is reality. If
Mm,
one person feels something, it's going to spread and that is their reality. So you literally have to think about that. We also used it with marketing. And that's really where the phrase came in for me, which is how do we punch up when you have zero budget and you're in a big space, you got a lot of competitors, there's a lot of noise, and you're trying to differentiate. What do you do? What can you do? You can change people's perception. You can make them feel that you are bigger, you are better, you're going to service them better, you're going to provide the solution more easily. And we did that in a lot of ways. Like we never, if you have like a $10,000 budget, which is a lot, even when you're a startup, or think about if you're first starting as a real estate agent, that's a huge amount of money, but it doesn't go very far. That's the problem. It really doesn't go very far. So how do you combat that? You've got to find creative ways to own things. And what I used to do is make Mike speak at, let's just say, one of the conferences.
okay.
I'd get a thought leadership, opportunity. I then, for no money at all, do like drop bags on the handles of every hotel door room, right? Like, so you'd have like a snack, which cost me nothing, but in a bag, and like maybe the lanyard and, was sponsored by us. But the cheapest thing is owning coffee cups. Those are the cheapest things to make with
No.
your brand on it. So you really look at ways to change people's perception because that becomes the reality. And
Mm,
we became, we could go to a conference, and I'm not kidding. We would spend less than $5,000, and all these other people would do these big things. But I just said, let's just own one event, but we're going to own it like so well. We're going to have thought leadership. We're going to sponsor the
mm,
coffee.
mm.
The cocktail napkins are going to have our name on it. Again, really, really cheap. And people are going to remember us because we're hitting them over the head with our name. And then they're going to think we're bigger. Same thing happened when we did our $1 million ad campaign, right? It was crazy. Literally in the birth of the social media space, I convinced the board, along with Mike, to spend $1 million, right? Like that's a lot of money to
Yeah.
do print ad campaigns in magazines and in the airport, like airport ads. And they kept saying, why would you do this? No, no. I said, look, this is going to be a lot, but I'm going to change the perception. I'm going to make people think we're as big as these big, consulting firms and, big companies like Dell and everything like that, that were, like when you go down the ramp, to get into an airplane, all the
Yeah.
advertising right there. Or when you were in Vegas and you go down the staircase, there was all of our ads. Or Chicago, we became the company in Buddy Media that we powered your connections, your social media connections. So we did a big sign in Chicago O'Hare right before baggage claim that said power your connections here. And it was a free way to charge. This was a long time ago when they used to charge you to charge your phone and stuff. This was your free charging station. So there
Ah,
are very creative ways that you can change the perception of who you are, right?
I love that. That's really good.
Thank you.
And that also shows how convincing you are. It's,
Yeah.
it's pretty,
Yeah.
I like that. Good sales. All right.
Yeah.
Let's end this with what tech you're using that other people listening in could easily grab and be like, "Ooh, I love that. Let's use that." What's what's a shiny object? Distract me a little. What's a shiny object that you think is pretty cool? Maybe we should use it.
Yeah, so we've gone down the path of AI video editing. So every real estate agent should be capturing video. It could be walkthroughs of houses if you have permission. It could be interviews with buyers. What are you looking for? Interviews with sellers, obviously getting permission. And these editing apps, so Opus Clip, Descript, and CapCut, those are
Oh,
three specific ones.
I love those.
And the hardest part is get the content. If you get the content, putting it together in clips that you can get out there and let it do the marketing for you is now really easy. And people are like, why are you working so hard and on social and video? Well, yeah, we have a video editor, someone who runs our social.
Mm-hmm.
We're fortunate enough to be able to afford it, and we're investing in it. These tools that we're using is like we have 10 editors. And so that's the newest kind of toolkit that I have. Cass still uses Post-it notes on her computer, so I
Wait,
look
wait,
forward to
whoa, whoa, whoa,
hearing.
whoa.
I look forward to
Whoa,
hearing
whoa,
what this is.
Wait, I believe it though. I believe it.
Listen, Mike. I think you would agree that I am managing a whole lot more than you are. Would you agree with that statement?
100%, especially
Okay.
with Post-it notes.
Okay. So I use Asana, which I like because it's a productivity tool. There are a lot out there, but I like how you can kind of have a board view and kind of goes vertically. I wish they'd do a little bit better with their reminders, but I do like that. And I do write sticky notes for the must do. Like I have to do them today. And the reason I do that is because when I'm done, I take them, I scrunch them up, it feels great, and I throw them in the trash.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. I use index cards, a little smaller
Yeah.
ones. So, do you have color coded ones or just one solid?
Yep. No, I have color coded ones.
Okay.
And if you looked at our calendar, even our home calendar has color codes for each kid, Mike, me, everything.
So cool. I love
Yeah.
seeing
But
the difference.
the best was when Mike said to me, I think we should get the family on Slack. I'm like, yeah, no, that's not happening.
That's funny. I love that. Cass, Michael, thank you so much. I appreciate this. This is very great. It's enlightening. I took a lot of notes. I got one idea at the beginning, which I might use. You mentioned April 14th, National Shovel Day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking for us in the real estate world, there's no national real estate agency.
Yes. Do it.
Wait a second.
Do it. Do an
Do
event,
it.
live
And
stream,
changes. Yeah.
interview all the best,
And also it
the
changes the
best minds.
perception, right? It's just going to make you look bigger and that you know what you're doing.
Yeah, so that was the idea. One of the ideas. I got a whole bunch from you guys. So
We love celebrations of people who aren't celebrated usually. So people don't celebrate shoveling shit, right? Most
No,
entrepreneurs and most entrepreneurs don't go public, right? Like we've taken a company public. We've been a part of many IPOs. We just had one, but the celebration, and that's a great celebration, but it's very rare, right? And
Yeah.
so we said with Gary, hey, let's celebrate what it takes to do this. And it wasn't just us, even though it definitely wasn't us, because you can't get another word in when Gary's on the live stream with you. But it was entrepreneurs. It was the entrepreneurs who we love. And so I could see you with your favorite experts just celebrating success in the real estate business. And I would tune into that because I think real estate agents, as I said earlier, are the best entrepreneurs. They eat what they kill. They're, what they make is definitely related to what they put in. And there's no more raw entrepreneur than a hungry real estate agent.
I appreciate that, guys. Michael, Kass, thank you so much. Everyone, please pick up the book, Shoveling Shit. Yes, there's a subtitle to it, but let's just stick to the main one, Shoveling Shit. It's a great one. I wish all of them came with a little shovel like you sent to me.
Yeah.
Super cute. My wife's like, that's mine. I'm like, okay, it's yours.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
having us.
you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
This is great. Thank you.